y'all, hope you're doing good today. So, I'm going to go ahead and say apologies for my dog. She's running around and doesn't want to go outside without me. So, we're about to go outside and I'm going to take you out there as well and show you some things I've been working on and just some things that are blooming and everything. So, anyway, if she's running around and making noise, I'm sorry. But I just briefly wanted to sit here inside. I prefer to be outside, but I don't have as many distractions in here. And I wanted to share another excerpt from this book, Zen and the Art of Happiness by Chris Prentice. And this is in, let's see here, I believe it's chapter 6. Let me double check, maybe 5. It's chapter 5 called Mindful Happiness. Yeah. So we're going to be looking at page 50 and 51 in chapter 5. And down at the bottom of page 50 it says, in the film What the Bleep Do We Know, Dr. Joseph Dispenza explains that when a new cell is produced, it isn't always a clone of the old cell, but a cell that contains more receptors for whatever peptide it received that caused it to split. If the cell received peptides produced by emotions of depression, the new cell will have more receptors for depression and fewer receptors to receive feel-good peptides. And then he goes into, cell division and the science behind that and everything. And so, and I'm not sure, I've heard Dr. Joseph Dispenza before. I can't really comment on him, but he's referencing this movie, this film. And so after he explains the science of how all this works in our bodies, he says, given what we now know about peptides, receptors, and the role of emotions and thoughts, you can see the chain of events that takes place as new cells are created according to what you think and feel. And this is on page 51. It says, if you feel depressed for an hour, you've produced approximately 18 billion new cells that have more receptors calling out for depressed type peptides and fewer calling out for feel-good peptides. It's as if trillions and trillions of receptors are all cupping their little hands around their mouths like tiny megaphones. I love the visualization. And shouting, send us more depression. In short, thinking gloomy thoughts creates a body that is more able to feel gloominess than joyfulness. It also creates the need, and he has this emphasized in italics, it also creates the need, quote unquote, for more gloomy thoughts. And you become addicted to gloominess. And I thought, it's kind of like, you've heard people say before, and I think this is true, it feels like science is behind a lot of the truths that have been preserved throughout the centuries in religion and philosophy, right? And I'm thinking of the Bible verse that says to guard your heart, with all diligence, because from that, is your life. And so there's a connection there, and you could associate that with feelings. And also there's the Bible verse that says to take every thought captive. And so we're supposed to be, managing, we're supposed to be observing and very aware and paying attention and just taking authority basically over our thoughts and our feelings. And this is now the scientific proof behind why that is so. And I love this little book again. And I know there's bits and pieces in here that are sort of, if you wanted to be a critic, you could say he's trying to sell his business through this book a little bit here and there. But I think it's just a part of his story. He and his son, I believe it was both he and his son, started a recovery center in, I think, Malibu, somewhere in California, to help people overcome addiction. And really, I read this as just it being a part of his story, his life story, his autobiography. So this book really is kind of like his autobiography in a sense. He even talks about his mother, and that's really interesting as well. And so I view it that way. But yeah, I just had to share that with you all. So there it is. Proof that, and that not only our thoughts and our feelings affect our body, but it keeps us kind of stuck in a loop from that point forward. And what that does for me, and I gotta check my microphone here because my little blue light kind of goes on and off. I think there's a short in the cord or something, but I think what this does for me when I read this is it basically says, don't blame yourself. If you find yourself just in a loop, sometimes we can start feeling down, and then hours can pass and we can feel like, why did that happen? And we can blame ourselves. You know, why didn't I snap out of this cycle of negative thinking or whatever it is sooner, you know? And you can blame yourself. That just makes you feel worse. Well, here's the science behind how, you know, it's hard. Your body can literally work against you and keep you participate. Your body can be the main driving factor as to why you become stuck in a cycle of negative thinking. So, and feeling bad. I just wanted to share that with you all. So now let's take a trip outside. Okay, so if you get glimpses of the mess all around me, please excuse it, because I am always in the midst of projects. So, the first thing I wanted to share is this cool little plant here. Isn't that beautiful? And a lot of this I didn't plant. You know, a lot of this was here when I got the house. We also have a lot of the flowers that were blooming are gone now, like the ones that bloomed in early spring, like the jonquils, the beautiful white and yellow jonquils. So, but this is I believe this is some kind of a laurel, like a mountain laurel. I'll look it up and drop it in the description if I can find out. But it's really just a pretty plant, basically just because the leaves are gorgeous. It has these mottled leaves. I don't remember it blooming. Maybe it does. And check this out. I have this old-fashioned bell in my yard. Look, isn't that cool? So I hope you could see that. I hope I was holding that up for you to see. So what I've been doing, first of all, I have to do a lot of raking around here because I have a lot of trees, and I have to pick up a lot of sticks as well. But I found this grapevine, and I believe it's like a muscadine or scuppidine vine that was wrapped around this other plant that I have, this bush. And so I didn't realize this was here. So I had seen a couple of, this must be muscadine vine, because I had seen a few that had rolled down the hill. I didn't know they had rolled down the hill. They were just under that tree over there. And I thought that the birds or squirrels were taking them from the neighbor's house and bringing them over here. But I believe they rolled down the hill now that I found this. So anyway, I've got this wrapped around this little trellis, I guess you might call it. And so I'll show you that. So y'all might think I'm crazy, but I absolutely love these little wildflowers. Look at how shiny this is. It's almost got like a waxy texture. I don't know what these are called. The term buttercup is coming to mind, but I have no idea if that's what this is. But I just think they're beautiful. This one's shining in the sun. I don't know if you can see the shine there. So I'm using an iPhone, and I wonder if there would be a better phone for photography, because I'm really interested in that. And as you can see, I've been doing a lot of raking, so I've got little piles of leaves I've got to get up here. But I just love wildflowers, and I've got moss in my yard. I have a natural yard. I like it that way. And so I love all the different types of moss that grow. And yeah, there's my leaf piles. But the moss is beautiful, and then I have a lot of wildflowers, and I believe these are just like clover flowers here. but I really like those as well. And the bees do as well, so I'm always seeing them. And I kind of feel like not only can I enjoy nature in this way with a natural yard, but it also is good for the animal kingdom. You know what I mean? There's so many yards that are manicured heavily, you know, and sprayed with all kind of chemicals, and I feel like maybe this is just my little part of not interfering with nature. I'm not sure what this is. This is a pretty large little bush, I guess, or tree. But look at these little, let's see if I can get it to focus here. Yeah, these little blooms. Aren't they cool? So I'll have to look and see what this is and share. This one's opened up. Yeah. So there's that. I have so many things like that here that I just haven't been able to learn about yet, you know. There's so much, and I love to learn. I've told you all that before. I love to research, and so see what else we can find. And here we have a very happy puppy. So I've got these roses blooming, and I did not trim back this rose bush. So it's kind of wild, but they smell amazing, and you know, I think you can appreciate roses even after their prime. You can save the petals and make potpourri, all kind of things you can do with them. So anyway, I just love all kind of flowers. So hostas are a really cool little plant. They're very hardy, and they're easy to take care of. You kind of just plant them and leave them alone. And I think there's a weed growing up in the middle of that one, but they can get very, very large. So I would just caution you, because once they get large, you know, just like any kind of a plant, you can have lizards and snakes that like to hide up under them. And here we have some of my favorite roses. And I love the variety in this one. Just absolutely gorgeous. Gorgeous. So there's that one. And I have, hey babies, I have this other rose bush with beautiful, intense colors. And lastly, this one is just very beautiful as well. And so I think that they're all very complementary together. And I haven't learned how to shape rose bushes very well yet, but they're still just a gorgeous pop of color, don't you think? And again, some more clover for the wildlife. So I hope you enjoyed that little tour of my outdoor space, and I would love to take more field trips with you all, and we may do that in the near future. So the last thing I want to share is, I've already mentioned when I first restarted this book, I don't know, what was it, about a week ago or so, I shared my thoughts on the first part that I had read, just kind of summarized my thoughts. But I want to share a really important point, because I went back and read some in chapter 3, and this is really important. Chapter 3's title is The New Experience. And he says, how do you change what you believe when your experience has convinced you otherwise? And I think that very thought a lot myself. It's kind of like, if you want to believe that, you know, the world is a good place, but yet all of your experiences are not all. Of course, we're not going to do black and white thinking here. We're going to, you know, transcend that, right? But when most let's just not use absolutes, when most of your experiences, have been either very challenging or created a lot of struggle in your life, or they've just been bad in whatever way. How in the world can you walk away from a past like that with a good attitude, And I think that's an argument a lot of people have. And I just want to share a little bit here. So he says, how do you change what you believe when your experience has convinced you otherwise? By creating a new experience. The best way for you to get that new experience is to change your response to what happens. And then he goes into the natural law of cause and effect. And he says your new response will create new results, which, will give you a new experience and therefore a new reality. And you just do that again and again and again. Now, that's easier said than done. And I don't know that we can walk away from everything that happens to us with just a positive takeaway. But I think that we can work towards that, for a lot of things that we experience. And just, again, it's sort of like, I had this thought randomly yesterday, I think, where it's almost like we have a bank inside of us, an experience bank. And, there are deposits, positive deposits and negative deposits. And it's sort of like which one's going to, win. And I think that's a big part of why we feel the way we do and in our current state. And instead of just letting things happen to us, it's really, really important that we remember the power that we have inside of us, that we have, as part of, the greater whole. We are part of the universe. We are part of God, right? And so as being a part of that, we have that creative spark within us, and we need to use it. And it doesn't mean that we can control everything, but it means that we can find what we can do within a situation, that we feel good about. And I think that being mindful about not being reactive, but being creative instead, is possibly a big key here. Can make just a huge difference. And so, yeah, I think that, for me, when I get involved, just totally submersed in a space that feels, it feels peaceful, and it feels peaceful because there's not interference, I think, and probably other reasons too. But I was mentioning interference earlier, with nature. But like my outdoor space, if there's not a lot going on, then I can just be totally focused, almost like in a meditative state on what I'm doing. And those are sometimes when I have my biggest revelations. I've mentioned before that the mind seems to me a lot of times like a computer, and I think that it's always running, even when it's almost like we have to take our conscious awareness out of the game for a minute and get it focused on a task. And when it's focused on a task like planting seeds or whatever you're doing out in your, outdoor space or your indoor space, if you're decorating and you're cleaning and you're organizing, you can make that a meditative practice too. Or with art, when I actually take the time to do it, which I haven't much lately, I want to get back to it, but whatever it is that you can immerse yourself into is sort of like a meditative practice. And what that can do is not necessarily empty your mind, because I think we need to always be vigilant, in terms of not being vulnerable to negative spiritual influence, okay? But you're just getting your conscious awareness busy, and so that it can't interfere or interject or get in the way or block this divine revelation that's trying to reach us, that's trying to reach our conscious awareness. And when you get your conscious mind busy on stuff, on a task, then again, that's when a lot of times I have big revelations. And it can be one, I say big, it can be one tiny little revelation. But it can be powerful. And sometimes that's all we need to change our mindset or to see things differently, look through a different lens, have a new perspective. And that changes everything, right? So find the part in your day where you can use that creative part of yourself, for a good outcome. Just find, it might just be a tiny little part of your day. But if you have multiple moments, there are opportunities for you to also see where you can be creative in that moment as well. And I think that will, over time at least, it should create more positive deposits in that bank, inside of us. That will, over time, make us have a completely new perspective on things in a positive light, because it has a reason, because the experiences are actually there, the proof is there, and so it's sustainable then. So I hope that this has been helpful, and I just thank you so much for coming along to hear the message, and I'll be back soon, and I hope that you have a beautiful day, and I'll see you again very soon.